I never told my son about the cabin on Kennebecasis River. Not once in 27 years did I mention the deed, the lockbox bolted under the floorboards, or the letters his mother wrote during those final weeks at the hospice in St. John. I had my reasons, and when the time came, those reasons saved everything. It was a Wednesday in late October when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I was staying at my sister Barb's place in Fredericton, 3 hours from home, helping her sort through her attic after her husband passed. I remember the exact moment because I'd just found an old photograph of Barb and me as kids standing outside our parents' general store in Minto, and I was sitting on the edge of her guest bed, turning it over in my hands, thinking about how fast 63 years go by. My son's name lit up the screen. Dad. His voice was wrong. Not angry, not sad. Scared. My boy hadn't sounded scared since he was 9 years old and fell through the ice on Washademoak Lake. Dad? She found the key. I set the photograph down. What key? The one you keep in the toolbox. The brass one. She's been going through your things in the garage. I closed my eyes. I'd been careless. 27 years of keeping that secret, and I'd gotten careless because I was in a hurry to get to Fredericton and forgot to move the spare key from the bottom of my toolbox to its usual hiding spot inside the wall socket cover in my workshop. Where is she now? I asked. She left 20 minutes ago. She took a photo of the key and the address on the tag. Dad, I think she's heading there. Call Hector, I said. Tell him exactly what you told me. He'll know what to do. Dad, what's in the cabin? What's she after? I paused. This was the conversation I'd been putting off for years. I'll explain everything when I get home. But right now, call Hector. I hung up and sat there for a full minute, listening to the rain against Barb's window. Then I called Hector myself. Let me go back to the beginning. You need to understand how we got here. My wife, Alma, was the smartest person I ever knew. Not book smart, though she had that too. She'd been an accountant for a firm in Rothesay for 19 years. I mean smart about people. She could read someone in 30 seconds flat. At dinner parties, she'd lean over and whisper, "That one's performing," or "Watch her hands. She's nervous about something." She was never wrong. Not once. Alma was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in the spring of 2009. Our son Kieran was 24, just finishing his engineering degree at UNB. The prognosis was bad from the start. 6 months, they said. She got 8, which felt like both a gift and a cruelty. During those 8 months, while I was falling apart, Alma was building a fortress. I didn't understand it at the time. She'd call Hector Savard, our family lawyer since 1996, and they'd talk for an hour, sometimes 2. She'd ask me to bring her files from the house, specific ones, always knowing exactly which drawer and which folder. She made me sign papers I barely read because I couldn't see through the tears. She sat with a notary in her hospice room, looking like she weighed 90 pounds, and executed documents with a hand that didn't shake once. "You'll thank me later," she said one afternoon. I was peeling her an orange because she said the smell reminded her of Christmas mornings in Miramichi. "I know you think I'm being morbid, but I'm not. I'm being practical." "I don't want to talk about it," I said. "I know. That's why I'm handling it." She also wrote letters. Dozens of them. Some to me, some to Kieran, some to people I didn't know. Old friends, a cousin in Moncton, her university roommate who'd moved to Whitehorse. And she wrote in a journal, a thick blue notebook with a lighthouse on the cover that she bought at a shop in St. Andrews years before. She filled that notebook front to back in her small, precise handwriting. After she passed, in January 2010, I couldn't bring myself to read any of it. The letters addressed to other people I mailed. The ones for Kieran I put aside for when he was ready. The ones for me, I opened one at a time over the course of a year, rationing them like water in a desert, terrified of reaching the last one. The journal I never opened. I couldn't. All of it. The journal, Kieran's letters, the legal documents, our marriage certificate, the deed to the cabin. Some of Alma's jewelry that had been her grandmother's, our original mortgage papers, and a few other things. I put in a fireproof lockbox and drove it out to the cabin. The cabin. I should tell you about the cabin. Elma and I bought it in 1998 for almost nothing. It was barely standing, a two-room structure on a half-acre lot overlooking the Kennebecasis River about 40 minutes outside St. John. The previous owner had let it rot for a decade. We spent 3 summers fixing it up. New roof, new floor, insulated the walls. Kieran was 13 that first summer, and he helped me lay the flooring. He was a good kid, careful, measured twice, cut once, just like I taught him. After Alma died, I couldn't go to the cabin for 2 years. Too many memories. When I finally did, it was to install the lockbox under the floorboards in the back room. I bolted it to the joists, covered it with the original planking, and put a braided rug over it. You'd never know it was there, unless you knew. The deed to the cabin was in Alma's name, transferred to a trust she'd set up before she died. The trust was managed by Hector. My name wasn't on the property. Kieran's name wasn't on the property. On paper, it belonged to something called the Alma Grenier Family Trust, and Hector was the only one besides me who had a key. I kept a spare at home. That was my mistake. Now, let me tell you about Maisie. Kieran met Maisie Dunlop at a friend's barbecue in the summer of 2022. He was 37, settled in a good job as a structural engineer with a firm in Quispamsis. Never married. He'd had girlfriends over the years, nice women, mostly, but nothing stuck. I think losing his mother young made him cautious. He didn't trust easily, and I was proud of that, honestly. Maisie was 31, worked part-time at a dental office in Hampton, and had what Alma would have called a very polished surface. She was attractive, well-spoken, laughed at the right moments, and asked thoughtful questions. The first time Kieran brought her to my house for Sunday dinner, she complimented the garden, asked about the framed photos of Alma, and insisted on doing the dishes. I wanted to like her. I really did. But there were things, small things. The way her eyes moved around my house, not with curiosity but with assessment. The way she asked about the neighborhood. This must be worth quite a lot now, the way the market's gone. The way she mentioned, casually, that her lease was up in November and she was exploring options. She moved in with Kieran by December. He'd bought a modest townhouse in Rothesay 2 years earlier. Within a month of moving in, she'd redecorated the living room, replaced the kitchen fixtures, and started talking about how the place was fine for now, but not really a forever home. I held my tongue. In the spring of 2023, Kieran told me he was going to propose. We were sitting on my back deck, drinking coffee, watching a pair of blue jays fight over the feeder. He looked happy in a way I hadn't seen since before Alma died. "What do you think, Dad?" I took a long sip of coffee. "Do you love her?" "I do." "Does she make you feel like the best version of yourself?" He thought about it. "She makes me want to do more. Be more." That wasn't the same thing, and we both knew it, but I didn't push. "Then, I'm happy for you," I said. And I meant it, mostly, because what else can a father say? You can't choose for them, you can only prepare. That night, I called Hector. "I want to review everything Alma set up," I said. "The trust, the will, all of it. And I want to add some things." "What kind of things?" "Protection." Hector didn't ask for whom. He already knew. Over the next 3 weeks, Hector and I restructured everything. The house I lived in, paid off since 2015, went into the trust. My investment accounts, which had grown considerably over the years thanks to Alma's careful planning, were retitled. My pension and retirement savings were named with Kieran as beneficiary, but through the trust, not directly. If Kieran and Maisie ever divorced, she wouldn't be able to touch a dollar of it. And then I asked Hector to draw up a prenuptial agreement. "Kieran has to agree to that," Hector said, "and she has to sign it voluntarily with her own lawyer present. I know, I'll talk to him." That conversation with Kieran was one of the hardest of my life. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Alma used to spread out her files, and I told him that I wanted him to ask Maisie to sign a prenup. He was quiet for a long time. Then, "She'll think I don't trust her. Maybe. but your mother spent her last months making sure you'd be protected. If Maisie loves you, she'll understand that this isn't about trust. It's about respect for what your family built. What if she says no? Then you'll have your answer about a different question. He didn't like it, but he did it. And Maisie signed it. She barely looked at it, actually just flipped to the signature page, scrawled her name, and said, "There. Happy now?" Her own lawyer, a woman from Sussex, witnessed it and filed the paperwork. Maisie later told Kieran's friend that the prenup was admirable and that she'd signed it to keep the old man happy. That was the first red flag I couldn't ignore. The wedding was in September 2023. I'd told Kieran I'd contribute $10,000, which I thought was generous. Maisie had other ideas. The venue alone cost $18,000, a restored barn outside Sussex with Edison bulbs and reclaimed wood everything. The flowers were $6,000, the photographer $4,000. The dress, I don't even know. Kieran told me the total was somewhere around $75,000. $75,000? I said. We were standing in my driveway. I remember because I'd been raking leaves, and I was still holding the rake. "Kieran, that's a down payment on a house." "She has a vision, Dad. A vision that's going to put you in debt before you've been married a month." He looked at the ground. "Some of it's going on credit." "How much?" "About $30,000. I wanted to shake him. Instead, I put the rake down and said, "Your mother and I got married at the United Church in Quispamsis. 42 people. Your grandmother made the cake. We spent $1,100, and it was the happiest day of my life." Times are different, Dad. Debt isn't different. Debt is debt. But the wedding happened. It was beautiful, I'll admit. Maisie looked stunning. Kieran looked nervous. I sat in the front row and wished so hard that Alma was beside me that I swear I could smell her perfume. That Chanel she wore every Sunday. The one I still keep on her dresser even though the bottle's been empty for years. During the reception, Maisie's mother, a woman named Dilia from Oromakto, who I had met exactly twice, cornered me at the bar and asked if I was planning to help the kids with a house. "They have a house," I said. "Well, a real house, something with space for a family." "The townhouse has 3 bedrooms. Delia stirred her drink. "Maisie's always dreamed of something with land. An acreage, maybe, something outside the city." I excused myself and went to find Barb, who was at a table near the dance floor, watching everything with the same sharp eyes our mother used to have. "That girl's mother just asked me to buy them a house," I said. Barb didn't look surprised. "The apple and the tree, Marie. The apple and the tree." The first year of the marriage, things moved fast. Maisie quit her job at the dental office. "It's so draining, and I want to focus on us." She leased a new Audi Q5 $48,000, $670 a month. She joined a gym that cost $120 monthly. She started talking about Kieran's salary the way you'd talk about the weather, openly, casually, and always with a note of dissatisfaction. He could make so much more if he went independent, she told me at Thanksgiving dinner, right in front of him. Consulting engineers charge 3 times what he makes. Kieran stared at his plate. "He has a good pension where he is," I said. "Benefits, stability. Stability." She said it like it was a disease. The spending didn't stop. New furniture. A kitchen renovation. A trip to Cancun that cost $8,000. I watched my son's face get thinner, his shoulders heavier. He stopped coming to Sunday dinners. When he did come, he checked his phone constantly, the way people do when they're afraid of missing an instruction. I didn't say anything. I'd learned from Alma that sometimes the worst thing you can do is confirm someone's fear before they're ready to face it. If I attacked Maisie, Kieran would defend her. That's how it works. You push, they pull closer together. You have to wait. And while I waited, I watched. Maisie started asking questions. Not right away. She was smarter than that. It started with small things. Your dad's house must be worth a lot. Has he ever thought about downsizing? Then, does your family have any other property? And later, directly to me, Murray, do you have a will? I just want to make sure Kieran is taken care of. He's taken care of, I said. We were at their townhouse, and she'd made a roast that was honestly quite good. She could cook, I'll give her that. I mean specifically. Like, is everything laid out? Because you hear these stories about families fighting over estates, and I just think it's so important to be clear. It's clear, I said. So everything goes to Kieran? I set my fork down. Maisie, my estate is between me and my lawyer. When the time comes, Kieran will be taken care of. That's all you need to know. She smiled, but her eyes didn't. It was around this time, early 2024, that Maisie started showing up at my house unannounced. She'd bring muffins or a casserole, or she'd say she was just in the neighborhood. She'd wander through the rooms while I made tea, looking at things. My bookshelves, my filing cabinet, the photos on the mantel. One afternoon, I came out of the kitchen and found her standing in my workshop, the door of which I always kept closed. She was looking at my toolbox, which sat on the workbench near the window. Just exploring, she said. This is such a great space. Kieran said, you used to do woodworking. Still do when the mood strikes. She ran her fingers along the edge of the workbench. You must keep important things out here. Tools and such. Just tools, I said. Nothing valuable. But she'd seen the toolbox. And I'd gotten sloppy. In the summer of 2024, Maisie pushed hard for Kieran to buy a bigger house. Not just any house. She'd found a property in Roadsay, waterfront, listed at $790,000. She showed me the listing on her phone like she was showing me a photo of a grandchild. Isn't it perfect? She said. For whom? For us. For our future family. I looked at Kieran. He was sitting across from me at their kitchen table, and he looked like a man standing at the edge of a cliff. Kieran can't afford that, I said. Well, Maisie said, and she smiled her brightest smile. That's why family helps each other. Family does help each other, I said, but not like this. That night, Kieran called me. Midnight. I could tell he'd been drinking. Dad, she's talking about having kids. She says we need the bigger house for kids. Do you want kids? I don't know, maybe. But not like this, not with this kind of pressure. Then tell her that. You don't understand. When I push back, it's not that she yells. She just goes cold. Like the temperature drops 30 degrees, and she won't talk to me for days. It's worse than yelling. Kieran, listen to me. That's not love. That's control. Silence on the line. I know, he said finally. I think I've known for a while. But knowing and acting are two different things. Months went by. Maisie kept spending. The credit card debt climbed past $40,000. Kieran took on extra projects at work, staying late, coming home exhausted. The Audi got traded for a BMW X3. The lease payment went up to $850 a month. Maisie started going to a spa in Hampton every 2 weeks, $180 each visit. I kept records, not because I'm vindictive, because Alma taught me that documentation is protection. Every receipt Kieran mentioned, every number he let slip, I wrote it down in a little notebook I kept in my bedside drawer. Date, amount, item. Alma would have been proud. Then October came, and I went to Fredericton to help Barb. I should have moved that key before I left. I'd done it every other time. Whenever I left the house for more than a day, I'd take the spare cabin key out of the toolbox and put it in the false socket cover in my workshop. It was a simple thing, took 30 seconds. But I was in a rush. Barb was upset, the drive was long, and I forgot. Maisie must have been waiting for an opportunity, because Kieran told me later that she was in my garage within 2 hours of me leaving. She'd told Kieran she was dropping off some preserves at my house. I'd given her a spare house key months earlier, against my better judgment, because Kieran asked. She went straight to the workshop, straight to the toolbox, and found the brass key with the address tag. What she didn't know, what nobody knew except me and Hector, was that Alma had anticipated all of this. Not Maisie specifically, of course, but the idea of someone like Maisie. In one of her letters to me, the last one I opened, Alma wrote, "Murray, you're a good man, but you trust too easily. Some days someone will come for what we've built, not because they love Kieran, but because they love what Kieran might inherit. When that happens, remember, the cabin isn't about the things inside it. It's about the proof that we loved him enough to prepare." The cabin had a security system installed in 2019. Cameras, motion sensors, the works. Hector's firm paid for it through the trust. The moment anyone approached the property, Hector got an alert on his phone. The moment anyone tried to enter, the feed went to a monitoring company in Moncton that would dispatch the RCMP. So when Maisie pulled up to the cabin in her BMW at 4:30 on a Wednesday afternoon, Hector already knew when she walked around the property, trying windows, peering through the glass. He was watching in real time. When she came back the next day, a Thursday, with a set of bolt cutters she'd apparently bought at a hardware store in Rothsay, and tried to force the lock on the front door, the RCMP were there within 12 minutes. She told the officers she was family. They told her the property was held in a trust, and she had no legal right to be there. She told them her father-in-law had given her permission. They called Hector, who told them the opposite. She was escorted off the property and given a warning. I drove home from Fredericton that night, 3 hours on the Trans-Canada in the dark, my hands tight on the wheel, my mind turning over everything I needed to say and everything I'd been holding back. When I got home, I didn't go to my house. I went to Kieran's. The lights were on downstairs. I could see them through the front window, sitting in the living room. Maisie was on the couch with her arms crossed. Kieran was in the armchair, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. He looked like he'd aged 5 years. Maisie opened the door. She was still wearing her coat. "Murray," she said, and she smiled, but it was the wrong kind of smile. Too wide, too bright. "I was just telling Kieran there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," I said. I walked past her into the living room and sat down on the other end of the couch. "Kieran, I owe you an explanation. And Maisie, you need to hear this too." Kieran looked up at me. His eyes were red. "Dad, what the hell is in that cabin?" "Your mother," I said. "In every way that matters." I told them everything. The trust, the lockbox, the letters, the journal, the legal documents. I told Kieran that his mother had spent her last months building a legal and financial structure that would protect him, not just from gold diggers, though she'd used that exact word in one of her meetings with Hector, but from anyone who might try to exploit the modest wealth we'd built over 40 years of careful saving. I told him that the house, the cabin, the investments, all of it was in the trust, that the prenup Maisie had signed was just one layer, that even without the prenup, the trust would have protected everything. I told him about the letters Alma had written to him. Letters for his 30th birthday, for his wedding day, for the birth of his first child, for the day he'd lose me, too. Letters he never received because I'd been waiting for the right moments, and somehow the right moments kept not arriving. "Your mother knew she wouldn't be here," I said, "so she wrote herself into your future. Everything in that cabin is a piece of her love for you, preserved and protected." Kieran was crying. Not making a sound, just tears running down his face into his beard. Maisie was quiet. I watched her process it. I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. What was accessible, what wasn't. What this changed. "So," she said finally, "all the money is in this trust. All of it. And I can't. Kieran can't. Kieran will inherit everything when I die. Through the trust, it's structured so that the assets remain protected even after transfer. If Kieran is married at the time, the inheritance is classified as excluded property under New Brunswick family law, which means it stays his. Only his." She stared at me. The performance was over. No more smiles, no more muffins, no more just in the neighborhood. "You planned this," she said. My wife planned this 15 years ago, before either of us ever heard your name. That's not fair. I leaned forward. I kept my voice even. Alma would have been proud. Maisie, in the 17 months you've been married to my son, you spent over $40,000 on credit, quit your job, leased 2 luxury vehicles, and tried to break into a property that doesn't belong to you. My wife worked 38 years. I worked 41. We saved, we invested, we went without. We didn't take vacations. We drove used cars. We packed lunches. That money represents our life's work, and it exists for one purpose: to give our son a secure future, not a comfortable present for someone who didn't earn it. The room was very quiet. Kieran, Maisie said, turning to him, are you going to let him talk to me like this? Kieran looked at her for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his face, the fog lifting, the clarity coming in like morning light. He's not saying anything I haven't been thinking, Kieran said quietly, for months. What happened next was ugly in the way these things always are. Maisie went upstairs, packed 2 suitcases, and called her mother. She came back down and told Kieran he'd regret this. She told me I was a controlling old man who'd poisoned my son against her. She said the prenup was signed under duress, and her lawyer would challenge it. Your lawyer witnessed your voluntary signature, I said. In an office with coffee, after reading every page, good luck with that. She left. The divorce took 7 months. Maisie's lawyer did try to challenge the prenup. The judge wasn't impressed. She tried to claim a share of the townhouse equity. About $90,000 had accumulated since Kieran bought it. The judge awarded her $12,000, roughly proportional to her 17 months of mortgage contributions, minus the credit card debt she'd racked up in Kieran's name. She walked away with the BMW lease, 2 suitcases, and a bill from her own lawyer. It was done. In February, on a Saturday morning cold enough to freeze the river, I drove Kieran out to the cabin. It was the first time he'd been there since he was a teenager. The road was plowed, but barely, and the cabin looked small under the weight of the snow, the way everything in New Brunswick looks small in February. I unlocked the door. The heat had been kept on low, Hector's arrangement, so the air inside was cool, but not freezing. I led Kieran to the back room, rolled up the braided rug, and pried up the floorboards. The lockbox was there, bolted tight, untouched. I opened it with the brass key. The letters were on top. 12 envelopes, each one labeled in Alma's handwriting. Kieran's birthday. Kieran's wedding. Kieran's first child. The day he gets promoted. The day he feels lost. The day he needs his mother. Each one sealed, each one waiting. Below the letters, the journal. The blue notebook with the lighthouse on the cover. I picked it up and held it for a moment, feeling the weight of it. Not the physical weight, which was nothing, but the other weight. The one that pressed against my chest every time I thought about Alma sitting in that hospice bed, writing and writing and writing against the clock. I haven't read it, I said. She read it for both of us, I think, but I couldn't do it alone. Kieran took the notebook. He opened the first page. Alma's handwriting, small and precise, like a row of birds on a wire. My 2 boys, he read aloud, and his voice broke on the second word. We sat there for a long time, my son and I, in that cold back room with the floorboards pulled up and the river frozen outside the window. We read the first few pages together. Alma wrote about the day Kieran was born, how the snow was coming down sideways, and I drove to the hospital in St. John at 15 kilometers an hour, gripping the wheel with both hands, terrified. She wrote about his first steps on the back porch, how he wobbled across the boards like a drunk sailor and laughed when he fell. She wrote about the day he graduated from high school, how she sat in the auditorium and thought, we did it. We got him here. And she wrote about the future she wouldn't see, but had tried to shape from a hospice bed with nothing but a pen and a lawyer and a love so fierce it refused to die when she did. Dad, Kieran said, looking up from the notebook. Why didn't you give me these before? Because you weren't ready. And honestly, neither was I. And the prenup, the trust, all of it, you think I'm angry about that? I wouldn't blame you if you were. He shook his head. I'm grateful. I married someone who wanted the money more than she wanted me. Mom saw that possibility from 15 years away. You saw it from the first dinner. He paused. I should have listened. You listened when it mattered. He put his hand on the notebook. Can I take this home? I want to read all of it. It's yours. It was always yours. I was just keeping it safe. We drove back in the early dark, the headlights cutting through the snow. Kieran held the notebook in his lap the whole way, one hand resting on the cover like he was holding his mother's hand. That spring, Kieran sold the townhouse and paid off the last of the credit card debt. He rented a small apartment in Quispamsis near his office and started fresh. He came to Sunday dinners again. He looked lighter. The color came back to his face. One Sunday in June, we were sitting on my back deck. The blue jays were at the feeder again. The garden was coming up. Alma's peonies, the ones she planted in 2005, had survived another winter and were beginning to bloom. I read all of Mom's letters, Kieran said, even the ones for things that haven't happened yet. I know she probably wanted me to wait, but I needed to hear her voice. She'd understand. There's one for the day I find the right person. She describes what to look for. She says, look for someone who makes you feel like you're already enough, not someone who makes you want to be more. You are already more. I remembered what he told me about Maisie years ago on the same deck. She makes me want to do more, be more, and I remembered thinking that wasn't the same thing. Alma knew. Even then, even from that hospice bed with the snow coming down and the machines beeping and her body failing, she knew the difference between someone who loves you and someone who loves what you can provide. Your mother was the smartest person I ever knew, I said. I know, Dad. We sat there, the two of us, watching the peonies sway in the wind, and I thought about the cabin by the river, the lockbox under the floor, the letters and the journal, and the deed and the photographs. All the things I'd hidden away and guarded for 27 years. The treasure that Maisie had tried to steal, not understanding that its value was the one kind she couldn't spend. I'm 63 years old. I've got the house, the cabin, the trust. I've got my pension, my health, my sister Barb in Fredericton. I've got a garden full of Alma's flowers and a toolbox in my workshop with nothing in it now but tools. And I've got my son back, sitting on my deck on a Sunday evening, reading his mother's handwriting with tears on his face and a peace in his eyes that money can't buy and no one can take. Alma planned for everything. The trust, the prenup, the cabin, the cameras. She planned for the gold digger before the gold digger existed. She planned for my carelessness, for Kieran's good heart, for the 100 ways love makes you blind. But the thing she really left behind, the thing that matters more than any lockbox or legal document, is the proof that you can love someone so completely that your love outlasts your life, that you can reach forward through time, past your own death, and catch your child before he falls. That's what was in the cabin. That's what Maisie never understood, and that's what I'll keep protecting until the day I join Alma. And the trust passes to Kieran, and the notebook sits on his shelf next to his mother's photograph, and maybe someday his own children will read it and know that they come from people who loved fiercely, planned carefully, and never, ever left anything to chance.